marketing is a really evolved function, and it's arguably at the center of the organization. When you go to the bank, you are like my CEO asked me, "How are you feeling?" So I said, "I feel like a goalkeeper in a cricket team." Because I'm playing a completely different game, and the banking industry. So you're not the center of the organization, and you have to fight to uh, earn that respect. I guess that is one thing I would say is a difference. The other big difference is in FMCG companies, we don't have data. We are insight-based companies, so we keep looking for the next insight. Like when I was in Levers, there was Daag Achhe, right? It's an insight that mothers actually want their kids to play. In the bank, you have a lot more data. So if we have 40 million customers, we have the data for those 40 million customers. And that's also what makes it a very exciting place to work, because then you can build on that information to get more clients. So these two, I think, from a left brain perspective, the second point, and from the right brain perspective, the first one.
And as a CMO, give us since you talk about data versus, let's say, an insight, data can lead to insights. But give us an instance where you looked at data and still you've taken a call which doesn't necessarily go with the insight that comes with the data. You've taken a contrarian call in terms of a big decision or a big strategic shift.
I don't know if I have a ready-made example, but even when we were thinking about our app, like I was talking about the app, we call it Open, by the way. A lot of the people, like I said, in the financial service industry, the business guy is the guy who leads the conversation, right? So when they came us and they were talking to us about saying, we have this particular feature called bill pay, right? So and the fact that they said that bill pay around 600,000 customers use it. Whenever a customer is on bill pay, he actually has a larger relationship with us, which means the Axis Bank is his primary account. And therefore, you need to have a lot more focus on the bill pay advertising. But when you speak to consumers, you realize that, and all of us, we don't use bank apps to pay your bills, right? Everybody uses GPay, Payphone, Paytm, right? Or any of those brands, because that's what's built in the consumer mind. So that was one instance where we said we will not go with what the saying, because that is not in the consumer's mind space. We'd be pushing water uphill. And therefore, I don't know if you've seen the advertising, but we focused on everyday problems of banking, like standing in a queue to get an FD or going out in the rain to, just do a money transfer, things like that. So it's still convenience, but we put a consumer lens on it.
I saw your communication was very, fast and tactical and topical, if I may use it, to both the, communication you showed in terms of, the people trapped in the tunnel and what you've done with the Uttarakhand government, Himachal government.
Yes.
And then you also did this other commission on OpenAI, right? Why no communication around the World Cup final?
So I think we did newspaper advertising on the final on the day of the morning, if you have noticed.
Yes, I know.
But as a brand, like I said, we're a 9 o'clock brand, right? So in this warm, empathetic, down to earth space, and we feel that as a passion point when you're going up. So we do advertise on the World Cup. We do advertise whenever there's a sporting event. But given that we're a 9 o'clock brand, given that we're in this slightly right brain space, we wanted to focus on art and culture. And as a company that's born in India, an Indian bank, we feel that that's the way that we can give back to society. So this year, for example, we've tied up with the NMACC in Bombay, NCPA we work with the Museum of Art and Photography in Bangalore. So we've picked out art and culture as that passion point for us rather than sport. Sport, I'm not saying we will not do sport, but given our current brand positioning and how we want to build the brand, we want to build it in that side.
And Anoop, you've been around for a long time. What has changed about marketing in the last 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic? And how has the role of a CMO changed or evolved?
I think second question maybe first. I think in most organizations, because of technology, right, what's happening is everything is converging. And therefore, the old way of kind of dividing your team into 3 separate parts and saying, you run product, you run brand, you run retail activation is not working anymore. So you need to actually get everybody to work, like in a mesh. And that's true not just for the marketing function, it's true for the entire organization. So you're part of, you cannot say as a marketing head, I may have the final call on marketing, but I'm not going to get away with murder if, uh, like I've given you that example of bill pay, it involves a lot of conversation and negotiation and convincing for it to happen. So I think that's one change. I think the other change, big change, and that's not last 3 years, it's since the internet has come on, and even in India, now the consumer can come back and tell you what they think. So before, as marketeers, we were really telling them, and this is something I keep saying in all the forums I speak, maybe I should stop. But before like you guys are an audience, right? Marketers, you should think that audience hai, hum aapko bolenge, aap sunenge, and you will buy our product. Now, you guys can come and say, I didn't like your talk, right? You were very boring. You can ping me on internet and say, LinkedIn, listen, this is this point that you made that day, but I'm not sure I agree with it. So I think that's a big difference, and brands need to get into a conversational mode with consumers.
Listening and conversation.
And that's why some of these,
New
some
ideas.
of the AI, a lot of that is also to encourage consumers to start saying these things, talk back to us, because you can't just be a brand that talks down to people.
Okay, Anoop, my favorite topic of the last at least 15 years, definitely 10, is how many CMOs become CEOs? How do you think CMOs, are we doing good? We see a lot of CFOs becoming CEOs. We see a lot of CSOs, revenue officers, and I'm talking non-media, I'm not
Yes.
talking. I'm talking, banking, I can tell you, you have very good examples. What do you think it takes for a CMO to become a CEO?
I think the CMO, one of the things that has died out, I guess, is there's no pure marketer, right? There's like, I'm in a pure marketing role, but the CMO has to know where the business is going.
Of
right?
course.
There's, I think, a general distrust of marketing, especially with a lot of data-driven stuff. You go to a lot of these new age organizations, marketing is not the first thing they think of, right? They think that consumer aa gaya, and I think it's a journey. So to become a CEO, I think the CMO has to always own the business, and if you're not contributing to the bank doing well, in my case, I will not be the CEO, right? When I said that I'm a goalkeeper in a cricket team, I just want to know, do you guys know who was a footballer who became a captain of the Indian cricket team? Correct. So it's not impossible, right?
Who's that?
MS Dhoni was a
Dhoni.
goalkeeper, yeah? So I think you need to adapt to the game you're playing, play that game. I can't forever be a goalkeeper in a cricket team. I have to play cricket, and that's when I can think of becoming the CEO. If I answer your
Every
question.
role is important, I'd say. If you contribute and you understand the larger purpose, which is business in this case,
Absolutely.
then you become whoever you want to become. Now let me focus on the BFSI banking. You talked about the fact that technology is the core of banking, right? We have a large team, you talked. And Axis Bank has done well. Stock market is one indication. Look at your stock price. It's almost hitting rupees 1,000, right?
Yes.
960 something, right?
Yes, touch
It's
wood.
up last, right? And the bank is doing well. I also have a business world role, so I know. Now, our banks in general have to reinvent themselves. They have many challenges. For example, there are neobanks, which has no legacy. They have no fixed branches, no ATMs. Fixed costs are much lower, using technology. And then there are, I know the holy grail for all banks is growth in retail.
Right.
And India is still very underpenetrated. America is at 96%, going to 98%. We're still at about 10%, right?
Right.
So we have a huge way. So what do you think Indian banks, and you can take your own, are trying to do to kind of become banks of the future, compete with neobanks and, become, like you said, Rishi's gone, but MMT's gone from a travel app to a holistic travel platform. Similarly, you talked about 2-3 brands which are for payment of everyday expenses. You don't look at the bank like that. So that's also, there's money to be made there.
Yes.
And again, the holy grail is upsell in banking, because your data, you see that he or she is buying a certain product, there is an opportunity to sell another product, right?
Absolutely.
So what are you doing to be able to leverage on this big opportunity?
That's a very good question. I don't know if and it says time's up, but I'll try and answer that. I think the most important things, banking has never been in my view, customer centric, right? And I'm not joking when I say we take your money and make you stand in a line. That's what the industry's done for the longest time. And the reason the banking industry is getting disrupted by whoever it is, fintech players, neobanks, etc., is because we are not customer centric enough. And I'm not trying to belabor the point I made in the presentation. So when Amitabh comes and says, my CEO, that we have to become customer centric, it is an absolute necessity. It's not, if we are not, we're going to die, right? So you cannot any longer tell the customer, you come later, we are busy, our system is down. They're going to take their business elsewhere. So I think that is the most important thing we have to do. The other thing that we do believe truly is that while banks might not exist in the future, banking always will, right? And if you think about it like that, then the people we are actually the most worried about are actually the tech players. So there are some countries where the guys who make my phone have gone in and taken away payments and don't give the data to the banks, right? So the phone, they have all the data. We don't have the data anymore. The banks don't have the data. So we need to build that tech edge. We need to be customer centric. If we can, and we need to expand, like you're saying. We're going deeper into Bharat, into India to get more and more people onto it. There's always a first mover's advantage. I would dare say that we are also a regulated industry. So it works in...
Look, your Bharat head, he's now on the board, right?
That's correct. Yeah, so the thing with RBI, who's our regulator, it's both protection. They also whip us, but they also protect us. So one of the things that I've learned is the reason, because it's money and people's money and it's finally the economy, it's not that easy to break into also. So it'll take the new players, because we have a regulator,
of course,
some more time. But in the meantime, if the banks don't change, if we don't become more customer centric, we don't build our tech, the consumer is going to get the better, superior experience elsewhere, and that's where they'll take their money to.
My last question, and we can take one or two questions, is again the role that a CMO plays in the evolution of the business has become very important, right? And there's an old line, marketing is business, business is marketing. However, are CMOs pushing for enhancement of their roles to become chief business officers, whatever be? And marketing's role is growth, which
Yes.
is the business officer's role. So tell me, is there a convergence in business roles and marketing roles more than before?
I think the industry has gone in such a way, like in Coke also we had chief growth officer in the middle, and then we went back to having a chief marketing officer. There's not to say that tomorrow there might be another chief growth officer, and marketing used to report to that chief growth officer, right? So I think in this world there's a lot less patience for anything to be seen through, is my view. I may be a romantic, maybe a bit old school, but I do feel that, like in my role, for example, if I look at it, I'm already having that conversation with my boss saying, I can't do this for the rest of my life, right? And I think naturally marketers have this advantage because we speak to consumers, because we are, if you're a good marketer, that is, you know what the consumer is thinking. When you start building products, like we were talking about the app today, right? So when you're having an app discussion, we are actually pushing the digital team saying, you need to do these things with your app. Otherwise, I'm not doing it for advertising. That's how we're going to differentiate ourselves versus every other bank's app, because they can do bill pay on the other bank's app. They can also book an FT there. But how do you tell that story differently, and how do you make the consumer feel is very, very important. So I think marketers should push to get more, otherwise there's no growth. And I do think product roles themselves lend themselves very nicely to.
How does the CMO upgrade himself or herself? Of course, reading is there are videos, there are experts, there's no substitute for meeting domain experts in every domain. What do you do to upgrade yourself? Of course, we know AI is big, so you may read around it. What does Anoop do to make sure that he has a segue into the future?
Your questions are pretty sharp, by the way, so that's also one way of learning. Thank you for asking them. I think you do have, I think the only, and I tell this to my team, the only thing that it doesn't matter if you're a CMO or not a CMO, you actually have to always be curious and learning, right? And once you have that mindset, it doesn't matter. You can learn from your peers. I was listening to Rishi speak. Or you can. The other day I was hearing the head of Naukri and how he set up his business and how it's come. So you have to be tuned in. What Google and our other partners tell us is that we are actually going to see a generational shift with AI. We don't know what it is going to look like, but it was first the internet, then the mobile phone, and now AI. These are the three big changes in our lifetime that we are seeing. It's going to be a big one. So all we can do is prepare, see what start thinking. I think at any point in time, you cannot just be thinking about your next ad, your next product, but you have to think about the future and how it might change your team, it might change your structure. So I don't have a proper answer, but just being curious and always learning, I think, is the only way.
Absolutely, and humility. Sometimes
Absolutely.
humility doesn't go with CMOs. Let me say that, but I have lots and lots of friends at CMOs. All of them are mostly good, but their nature is also set. If they don't put filters, they get bombarded. So sometimes CMOs are very misunderstood. Oh, he doesn't return my call. If 100 sellers are calling him on a day, he cannot or she cannot return 100 calls. He has to work also.
A super point.
Where will be Anoop in 3 years from now?
I have no idea.
You have no idea. Your socks are cool. I wear call. I think your socks are cooler than my
Thank you.
socks today.
No, I get this question a lot in interviews, and I always say that I don't have a goal. I just want to keep learning, and if I keep learning, I'll get to. I didn't think I'd be CMO of Axis Bank if you asked me 3 years back. So I still have no idea where I'll be after 3 years.